This conference will now be recorded.
I'll be sharing my screen again. Let me know once you all can see the screen, please. Is the screen visible? Hello. Kavita, Lazmi, Padma, is the screen visible? And am I audible to you all?
Hello, sir.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for the confirmation. So until yesterday, we had covered software testing and what exactly software testing is, what are the myths about software testing, and then what exactly is the scope that how frequently you change, how frequently basically you can change while working from the software tester side to any other role if in case you want to switch. So for today the agenda is that we primarily will be covering up software development lifecycle and the different models around it. So very first thing today that we are going to cover up is SDLC, that is software development lifecycle, and there are different models in it like waterfall, incremental, spiral, V, agile. So the basic thing starts from is SDLC. What exactly SDLC or software development lifecycle starts means? Taking a very simple example, if in case you have to cook something, for example, let's suppose if you have to cook either a vegetarian dish or a non-vegetarian dish, for example, let's say you have to cook maybe cheese potatoes, right? What exactly we do? There are certain processes, certain policies, or you can say certain key points, the prerequisites that we need to understand. As in, like, you should have all the vegetables chopped, you should have the required amount of spices, salt, pepper, etc. Third thing could be you need to have the gas line, maybe to lit it and then cook the food and stuff. In the same way, there are certain prerequisites, certain steps that needs to be followed while you are developing software, right? And the steps that involves development of a software is basically called as a software development lifecycle. So you can try to relate it with the life cycle that humans have. Like when a baby is born, he's an infant. At the age of 2, 3, or 2 to 3, person starts walking, right? At 5, they start going to school, then complete their school, go to college, gets the degree, job. After job, gets married, have kids, and definitely for all of us, the last stage is, and that's how our life cycle ends, right? The same way we have the life cycle for software development, that is something we constitute as SDLC. So SDLC is software development lifecycle. It is a sequence of activities which are basically needed, or you can say they are carried out by developers for designing a good quality software. So to make a good quality software, to design to develop a good quality software, you need SDLC, which stands for software development lifecycle, primarily acts as the sequence of activities like one after another, and after another. Now there are different models involved in SDLC. One is your waterfall model, second is incremental, then you have spiral, V model, agile. So before we deep dive into these kind of models, the very first thing that you need to understand is the different phases. So the very first phase starts with is requirement analysis. The very first step is requirement analysis, and this is how your SDLC looks like. The very first thing is requirement analysis. Then you have is designing phase. Then you have coding. Then you have testing, deployment, operation, and maintenance. Requirement analysis. What does this mean? Taking back again an example of, let's say there's a small event at your house and you are throwing a birthday party, right? birthday is next month, let's say, let's assume 15th of November. You still have 2 weeks to plan out everything. What do? All the family members get together, sit around at one table, maybe at the dinner time, breakfast time, or whenever it's convenient for all of them. Five of you sit together on a table, and then you discuss, all right, we need to plan it this way, we need to do this, we need to do that. So thousands of thoughts come into everyone's mind, right? Someone might say, let's throw the lunch outside. Someone might say, let's plan it inside. Someone might say, let's hire an event management team. Let's hire a clown for babies and stuff, right? Thousands of points are thrown on the table while discussion. In the same way, that particular phase is called as requirement analysis. So you are basically understanding your family members' thought process. You're trying to get what they are saying, you're trying to share what you have in your mind, and then all the points are jotted down. The same way we have is for software development. Now, I hope everyone might be using WhatsApp, Instagram, or something like that. Any social media platform. A quick yes no would be really helpful.
Yes.
All right. So let's say you're using Instagram, you're using any WhatsApp or stuff like that, right? So while developing the WhatsApp or XYZ, chatting application or social media platforms, thousands of requirements are put down on the table. As in, like, when you hit send button, single text should arrive, right? This is a requirement. I mean, single tick when the message is sent and not read, right? If you're using WhatsApp, this is something you might have noticed. Double tick what it happens if the message is sent and delivered successfully, right? Third thing is the blue tick functionality. Now you might have seen this as well, blue tick, as in, like, if the recipients read it, it colors it, it turns out to be blue. You can turn it off, turn it on, right? If you talk about Facebook, Facebook has the like functionality, right? If you like it, you will be able to understand that whoever liked your picture. If you react on it, you will be able to see who has shared you any kind of comments, likes, any stuff on your post, right? So all these were the requirements that were given at the time of requirement analysis phase while developing applications like WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagrams, and some of them were rejected, some of them were accepted. So all that particular discussion that happens from different stakeholders. Now, can anyone tell me what exactly do we understand by stakeholders? We discussed it yesterday. What do we understand by stakeholders? Anyone remembers
They are
that?
the one who invest in the product.
Perfect. Absolutely. So stakeholders basically is people who are investing, people who are actually responsible for putting their money and time on the business, right? And then talking about another thing that we have is, so this is the particular phase that comes as a requirement analysis phase, as in, like, interaction with stakeholders to understand what exactly the process is all about, right? How do you need to proceed ahead? Second thing is design phase. Now, what happens in designing phase is, let's say you have got 1,000 requirements. Now, just imagine, if you have got 1,000 of requirements, is it feasible to develop 1,000 requirements altogether? Taking you back to the example of the family member's birthday, there are five inputs. One is saying, let's hire an event team. Second person is saying, let's go outside and throw a big party. Third person is saying, let's not give that much big a party or even management team. Let's do something small which everyone can accommodate into. So these are three different suggestions. Do you think all these three suggestions can be implemented at one time?
No.
You cannot implement all the three suggestions at one time, right? The same way, while developing a software, everything cannot be implemented at a single time. So if there are 1,000 requirements, you have to do what? You have to filter out. If I try to zoom it in, I hope this much font is visible to all, right? Everything is not feasible because of feasibility constraint, right? So you have to filter out the requirements. Now, when I say filter out the requirements, like let's say out of 1,000, you filtered out 900. Now, once the 900 are filtered, you are left with 1,000 requirements, 100 requirements as finalized one. Now, once they are finalized, what we basically do, we create a document of these final requirements. Now, once the document of these final requirements are created, that particular phase is something that we call as a design phase. Now, we create a high level design document in which the requirements are gathered for the team reference. Now, if the team is there, you gather all those requirements, present them, and tell them that these are the final set of requirements we'll be working on while developing the software, and you have to refer it. Now, that particular document is called as software design description. What is called as software design description? The abbreviation is SDD, software design description. Now, what does that mean? It is a piece of document which has the finalized set of requirements to be developed and worked upon by the team. So this is something that team has to work on. This is something that team has to develop based on the given set of requirements that were discussed, finalized, and summarized. Third phase that starts with is coding phase. Now, what happens in coding phase is SDD, right? Once you are done with software design description, you have to convert that particular requirements into technical. Let's say you had finalized these two requirements. One is login form. Let's say this registration form, and then second is login page, right? Then let's say third is search functionality. Now these three requirements were finalized, as in like you will be working on these three set of requirements. Now what again something else might come up is, if this is something that come up, that is fine, but apart from that you need to do something additional, which means you have to give the verbal requirement, or let's say written requirement, into a technical side. That means now your real development start when we include coding in it, right? When we include coding into it, then your real development basically starts, and that's what we basically try to call it as coding phase. That means once the requirement are finalized, once the requirements are discussed, then they are finalized, then you have to convert those finalized requirement into coding phase. uh, this particular software, right? If I earlier the requirement was that develop this software in such a way that you have mute button, mic button, camera button, share button, and stuff, right? Then out of those 1,000 requirements, 100 were finalized, and after that they started developing it. So this particular product that you see is actually a real-time example of all the six phases that we are discussing right now. So third phase was development. So team developed this particular phase. Now, Padma, you confirm me, if I send you the unmute request, will you receive something or not? I'm right now sending you the unmute request. Did you
Hello?
get any notification?
Yeah, yes, sir.
You got, right? Now, Kavita,
Yeah, got.
again, just trying to implement the same thing on you. You might also receive something, maybe some notification or some pop-up, some
Yes.
message,
Yes, I
Yes,
did.
right? So
yes.
this is what exactly came up as a
Mm,
technical side. That means the software development happened in this way, right? This is the third phase that we call.
oh. Yes.
Now the fourth phase is testing. Again, this is what we are primarily discussing since yesterday, like day one. The fourth phase is testing. Now, what happens is once your requirement is developed, like once you created these three pages, what these three pages were? These three pages were this one. You have created your login page, you have created search functionality, you have created registration form. Now is the testing part. Now, what happens in testing is you go ahead and test them on the real-time software whatever is being developed. Now, what we do right now was a testing, right? I tried unmuting, I tried muting, I shared my screen, and if I try to give control to Lasmi, it'll go to her control. If I try to give the control to Ravi, it will go to his side, right? That's how the real-time testing happens. So what happens exactly in testing is, if you see this particular definition, testing of the software is done which is developed in the development phase, right? Which is developed in the coding phase. Once the coding is done, you have to do the testing. And that's how you have to do testing, like trying to mute the button, unmute the button, send request, I mean, block the person and see if the messages are being sent or not. This is something I'm telling you on a real-time side. We'll slowly be covering up all these topics again, right? And then you have is deployment phase. Now once the testing is done, once the development is done, you have a deployment phase. Now anyone understand what exactly the keyword deploy means? Basic English keyword deploy. Deploy basically, all right, so if I kind of have to Google it for you, deploy meaning to put soldiers or weapons in a positions when they are ready to fight. That means you are deploying someone, right? Just let's, if I say deploying meaning, what does that means? That specifically means to move, right? To move someone from one place to another. So you might have heard of this terminology. We are deploying soldiers for the for the fight. We are deploying soldiers for the war. So deploy basically means once everything is set up and running, you put it at one side from where that particular resource can be used. So once your software is developed, once everything is developed, you have tested that. Now is the time to bring it to the area which everyone can go ahead, use and work on. So that means you are giving it live. You are putting it in front of the users who can work. That means you make it live, right? So these particular websites, let's say www.amazon.in, this is the live website, right? This is what this is live website. If I talk about www.myntra.com, this is a live website. You go ahead and you test over here, right? You can use these applications. So once you use these particular applications, that means the code, the software is already deployed at a place which is used by everyone, right? Now again, if I have to, simple, you are migrating it into the production environment. Production environment means the live site that you use right now, right? That's what we call as production environment. Now once the deployment is done, the second phase is C, final deployment, so that end users can use the product without any bugs. That means if I'm using WhatsApp, I can use WhatsApp without any issues in it. I want to send the request, I can send the messages, I can send images, I can block a person, I can disable the blue tick and stuff. All these things basically happens in once your software is developed, once your software is tested, and after that the deployment happens. The last phase is operation and maintenance. Now let's go back. You had your family reunion, right? Let's say 20 people, 20 of your relatives came to your place. You served them food. So let's start with that. You had a family reunion. First thing you decided was 10 items that you wanted to cook as a part of requirement analysis. Out of 10, it was difficult to cook all the things. So you segregated 5 items. You went with menu like salad, chapatis, rice, and then two vegetables. Let's say one chicken curry and the another is like potato veggies, right? So once the chicken curry and potato veggies were ready, You developed that, right? In the development phase, you finally cooked everything. In the testing phase, you tasted the food before it could be served to the relatives. I hope you all are able to relate it with the very basic example, right? The different phases versus the example that I'm taking right now. Testing phases, you tasted the food, right, before serving it to the end user. Who is the end user for you? Your relatives are the end user right now because they are someone who are going to consume the food. The same way, who are end users for companies like Instagram, WhatsApp, Twitter, Facebook, Amazon, people like you and I, who are actually sitting online and shopping when any sale comes, or likewise as well in our general day-to-day trends, right? So once that happens, deployment is done. Once the deployment is completed, once the relatives had tasted the food, once the dinner part is done, then is the time when they might give you some feedbacks, right? It might happen that food was good, but it was too spicy. It might happen that food quality is good, but there is no salt in it, or minimal amount of salt is there. Something XYZ can happen with the food, right? And that's what where you get the feedback. That's what where the operation and maintenance phase of software also begins. Now, what happens in this is if there are any bugs that are reported by the end user, right? If there are any enhancements that you have to do. Now, what do you mean by enhancements? Small new features that you have to add, right? How many of you are using WhatsApp here? I hope everyone is using, right? So if I talk about uh, the blue tick feature, when the WhatsApp was developed, there was no payment method integrated, right? You could not use it for online payments. You could not use it for sharing your screen. You could not create broadcast channels. You could not create groups in it, right? So now everything is enabled in it. What does that mean? If you're using Instagram, Instagram has a feature of one-time view. Now WhatsApp also has a feature of one-time view. Like when you send an image, you can see who can, like it can be a one-time view. If you delete any message on WhatsApp, you have an option of delete for everyone or delete for me, right? Now you can also edit in WhatsApp. There is another feature that WhatsApp has added with, I think, a 15 minutes window. You can edit your text that you have sent, but the time frame should be within 15 minutes. So when WhatsApp was developed, these kind of features were not there in the beginning. Yes or no? Agreed?
Yes. Yes.
Yep.
Right. All these things came into existence slowly and gradually, right? And
Yeah.
you were not even informed, right? People like you and I were not even informed that what exactly are the changes that are coming up. You might have noticed if you are using an iPhone or an Android, every time the software asks for update, there is some or the other feature that gets added to it, right? And
Yep.
these 5 steps, these basic 5 steps are the cycles that work behind that upgradation. That means a new requirement comes up, they analyze it, then they design it, then they develop it, then they test it, then they deploy on that real-time application. Once everything is done, then you get an option that all right, you need to upgrade your software, right? Once you update the software, that's where you get to know that there are enhancements that are done in the application. There can be a security enhancement like two-way authentication, feature unlocking, right? All these are security enhancements. So this 6-step journey is basically what we call as software development life cycle. This stands as a basic pillar for which everyone uses development life cycle in the different models that we'll be discussing going forward. Any query, questions, concerns in these 6 steps? I mean, feel free to say if in case you have, because it will be really easy. If you do not have, then also it's fine. Are we good until now?
Yep.
All right. Moving forward, now the real game starts. We have different models that came up. Starting from the very basic one is the waterfall model. Now, if I basically talk about waterfall model, before talking about waterfall model, let's discuss about this simple structure, right? Let's consider this as your staircase. Simple. So waterfall model is something that came into existence at the very first phase, which also has these 6 steps going forward, as in like requirement analysis, design, implementation, testing, deployment, and maintenance. Now just consider this way. When you have to just consider it like this, you are standing here, the person is standing here, right? And he has a jug in his hand, right? This is a water jug. He starts pouring water. How will the water float on the surface of stairs? Consider this as your stairs, right? Consider this as a staircase. I've already specified. How do you think the water will start coming up? I mean, coming
Step,
down, right? First
step
step,
by step. Yep.
second step, this is third step, fourth step. Once this is done, fifth step, and let's draw another one, and then this is your sixth step, correct? So this is a step-by-step journey. The water will start flowing. It will always come from top to bottom direction. There is no way water can be, I mean, water can reach out like this, right? This is never a possibility. Whereas this is always a possibility. So in the same way is what we talk about in the waterfall model. All these steps, first, second, third, right? And then this is fourth, this is five that we talk about deployment, and this is six. So these 6 steps is something that we follow in waterfall. Step by step process, just giving you a heads up, high level idea, and then we'll talk about this particular in detail. So any requirement that you define starts from step one. Now tell me, can you go back? Can you go back if you are at step two? If the water is at step two, can water go back to step one?
No.
Is there any way that I can take water back to step one?
I think no.
Logically, no,
Logically,
right? The logical answer is no.
yes.
So if you cannot take the water back,
Yeah.
what does that indicate? Any changes that you want to do. For example, if there is an issue at step one, but you have already passed that step. So any changes that you find now in step two, which are highlighting the changes of step one, right? Let's say there was some issue at step one, but now you have reached to step two. So you cannot go back to step one and correct it. Whatever has been hampered has been hampered. You cannot go back and change that. Now, what does that mean? Let's start with the when to use waterfall model, right? Requirements are not changing frequently. Now, why do you think that requirements should not change very frequently in waterfall model? Anyone who wants to take a guess on it?
Uh, because once changes are done, we cannot go back and correct them.
Absolutely correct, right? Requirements are not changing frequently. This is first. Fair enough, we agreed that once the changes are done, once things are finalized, you cannot go back and track it, right? Second thing is application is not complicated and big. I mean, although it can be big, no problem, but it should not be much complex. Now, when the application is complex, it can lead to change of requirements, correct? If you have 5,000 dishes to be prepared, you can get confused at that point of time that what to serve at what time, correct? The same way, application should not be too complex that it might need change of requirements. So if the requirements are being changed at every point of time, then it is really difficult for the development team, for the testing team, for the project to manage those set of requirements for which waterfall is not made. Because requirements has to be simple, then only you will be able to finalize the requirement and go to step 1. Get this done, go to step 2. Get the work done here, go to step 3. Get the work done 4, get the work 5, and then release the product and then get into operation and maintenance phase. So if the requirements are not, if they are complicated, it is difficult because change might be required at any point of time, at any step, which waterfall does not allow. Third thing is shorter project duration, or you can use it for longer project duration, which is absolutely fine. Requirement is clear. So I'm just highlighting those. One second. This is all right. So I'll just highlight which exactly we would be now worrying more about. Requirements should be clear, stable environment, trained resource availability, and then stable tools and technology to be used. The fourth thing comes up is requirement is clear. Exactly as we just discussed, it should be loud, crystal clear, so that if you do not want to change any requirement, you might not need to backtrack, right? There is always a possibility that you always will have to come from top to bottom. Bottom to top is never a feasibility. So this is a big no for it. You cannot go back, but you can only travel in this direction. This direction is never a possibility, right? And then stable tools and technologies to be used. Stable environment. Environment is basically a mixture of hardware and software. It's a combination of software and hardware where your development work starts, right? Where you can actually go ahead and test the application. You can deploy the application, you can test the application. Stable tools and technologies to be used. Why we need stable tool and technology? Because we do not have time for any changes, right? Once you finalize the technology in one of the phases, you have to stick to it, go with it, and then start your development work. Trained resources to be used. Now what do you, when we say trained resources to be used, that simply means you have to use the resources which are trained enough, because waterfall does not allow you to train the resources in between your development, right? Since the requirements are clear, everything is fixed, finalized, you cannot change the resources in between. You have to go ahead and work along. Now everything is associated with the pros and cons to it, right? If you have anything created in the universe, you might have its advantages and disadvantages. Like the same way, all the social media platforms have their advantages, disadvantages, humans, advantages, disadvantages, and stuff. So the waterfall model also has some of its advantages and disadvantages. Key things to take away from these 4 or 7 points is, before, so I will talk about the advantages first. Before starting the next phase, each phase must be completed. So for example, if I am targeting to complete this particular phase, that is a requirement analysis phase, this development phase, I have to complete the requirement analysis. So once this is completed, then only I'll be able to move to this. Once this is completed, then I go to third, and then fourth, fifth, followed by sixth step. Right? There is no way that I should get confused. All right, I am not done with first step, I have to do third. No, I'm not done with third, I have to do fifth. So these confusion is not there. Simple, crystal clear. Complete the step 1, then move to 2. Complete step 2, then move to 3. This is suited for large projects. It can be large, it can be small, no problem with the size, but requirement should be well defined. Project size does not matter here. Requirements does matter. It should be well defined. When we say well defined, it should be crystal clear. It should be something that should not change very frequently. Correct. Third thing is quality assurance. So when we talk about quality assurance, everything has to be completed, checked, verified at step 1 before moving to step 2. check, verify everything that whatever was a part of step 2 to be developed, test is that completed before moving to step 3, and so on and so forth. So these are certain kind of advantages that you need to know for waterfall model. Another thing, this is the project is totally dependent on the project team with minimal client intervention. There is no client requirement. Why? Because if I talk about this particular side, right, what exactly is happening here is we are discussing the requirements. Now, if we finalize the requirement, client is there, stakeholders are there at step 1. Once this is done, step 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, there is no interaction with the stakeholders. They are not at all bothered about what exactly is happening or what exactly is being done in the team, right? All they want is the final product. This is same like you have a box, you call it a software, right? And then you have an input, you give, let's say, x equal to 2. Now inside, or let's say x equal to 2 and you are sharing y equal to 3. After that, what you want is the output. You are not concerned of what exactly is going inside. It can be multiply, it can be subtract, it can be addition, it can be division, anything. If it's a multiplication, what will be the result? 2 into 2, 6. 2 into 3, 6. If it's an add, what will be the result? 5. 3 plus 2, 5. Why? Because we are doing an operation of y plus x or x plus y, x into y, right? If it's a division, let's say y divided by x, then the result is going to be 1.5. So what exactly is happening inside, you do not know. You are only aware of the action at step 1. After that, client is only bothered about output. He is not bothered what exactly goes inside, outside. He or she does not have the interaction with the team, so they are not aware of it. And that's what, you know, is it can be considered as an advantage of waterfall, that if interaction with client will happen, it might lead to change of requirements, right? But since waterfall model strongly agrees that there won't be any changes in the requirements, that's the reason why it does not allow much of the client interaction as well. Now once we are done with the advantages, we now have a point of covering of disadvantages, is that error can be fixed only during that phase, which is absolutely true. Now let's just take this example. If you move at step, you are at step 1, this is step 2, 3, my bad, I don't have a stylus right now, I'm just using my keyboard to write. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You are at, let's say, requirement is done, this is done, I am at development phase. If there is any error in the development phase, that can only be rectified before I go to step 4. Once I am at step 4, it cannot be checked. It cannot be changed. Why? Because I cannot go back. And going back means if you cannot go back, there is no point you'll be able to rectify the error at step 4. So if there is an error, it will be passed on to step 4, and then that error will remain throughout in the particular software. Because ultimately at step 6, we are at step 5, we are delivering the product to the end user, right? So that's one of the disadvantages in waterfall. It is not desirable for complex projects. This is something that we already know now. Testing period comes quite late than the development, which is absolutely true. So this is your development phase. This step 4 is the testing phase. Now, can you take an example like you have cooked 5 vegetables? Let's go back to the get together at your home. You cooked 5 vegetables for your relatives, right? 20 people were coming at your home for dinner, and then you had cooked 5 vegetables for them. Once everything is ready, then you tasted it. Do you think that it is a good practice, or what do you think should be done? Start tasting the items in parallel. What do you think is the best way? Let's say you cook 5 items and then you are tasting everything. This is option one. The second option is you cook one item and see if everything is up to the mark or not. Then only you move to item two. What do you think should be the best way?
Yeah, after each item.
Tasting the food after each item, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That should be, in general, that should be the best approach. Or maybe whatever you are doing, you keep a check on it, like after every 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, you are watching it and then seeing how the taste looks like, right? But this is not the case in waterfall. Waterfall says that once you have developed everything, then only you can touch it to test, which is bad. Which I'm not saying it's bad, which can be problematic, right? Because development and testing, if goes in parallel, can save a lot of amount, can save a lot of money, can save time as well. Documentation occupies a lot of time in it, right? We are at step point 4 now. It requires huge amount of documentation because client interaction is not there, random rapid changes are not there. So you need to document everything at step 1, then step 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, because once you are done with the documentation, then only you move to the next step. Small changes or errors in the complete software may cause a lot of problems. The reason behind that is, if let's say there is an error at step 3, that will be carried to step 4, that will be carried to step 5, and the same software which is having bug in it will be released to the end user, because you do not have the opportunity to change it right now, right? You do not have the opportunity to close it. So this is something basic about waterfall model. Anyone has any doubts, any query, any concerns in waterfall? All right, I take it as a no. Moving on, we have, after waterfall came into existence was incremental model. Now, if we talk about an existence of incremental model came as, like, it's a model, it's a software process model where the requirements are broken down into standalone modules. Now, when we say the requirements are broken down into standalone modules, what does that mean? That basically means you have a big set of requirement, right? You have a big chunk of requirement. Let's say this is a big website in e-commerce platform. Let me kind of write it here. This is an e-commerce platform that you need to develop, right? Now, once you plan to develop an e-commerce platform which has search, login, these are basic functionalities that I'm talking about, right? Search, login, log out, register, add to cart, and then let's say payments, etc. These are certain options that it has. Is it feasible to make everything at one go? This is very difficult. This might be very difficult. It's not easy for a single person, or it's not easy for one person to cook everything at a single go. You cannot use all the gas stoves at one time. You are cooking paneer, at second time you are cooking potatoes, third time chicken, and so all four gas stoves, burners, and all four items are being cooked at once. This is kind of possible but very risky,
Yes.
right? It's like a next to impossible stuff. The same way we came up with another model, practitioners came up with another model, that in waterfall it was very difficult for one single software to be developed at all time all together, right? Then it came as an existence that in incremental model what we'll be trying is, we break the given set of application or a big requirement into small chunks, right? And let's say this is the e-commerce platform, we are dividing this given set of requirement into small chunks. Like, we have a functionality of search, we have login, log out, register, add to cart, payments, and etc., right? So all these things can be broken down into different set of requirements. Let's say this is requirement 1, this is 2, this is 3, 4, this is, let's say I call it 5 and I call it out as 6, right? Now once these requirements are divided, these requirements are assigned to different teams to work upon. Now there are 6 teams working in parallel, right? This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 teams working in parallel, 6 teams testing in parallel. They do not have any dependency on each other while they are developed and tested, right? So in this way, what exactly happens is we are saving a lot of time. We are saving time on testing, we are saving time on development, we are saving time on the end-to-end software development, correct? Now, what does incremental model says? It states that it's a process where the requirements are broken down into software standalone modules. So we broke down the given e-commerce application into standalone modules and we gave these particular names to those modules. Now, once the names are given to these particular modules, what we basically go ahead and do is we do the analysis, right? All the six steps, all those 6 steps are pretty common: analyze, design, code, test, and then increment and stuff, right? So this is like, let's say, login, this is like register, this is like search functionality being developed. All these 3 requirements are different, no dependency on each other. For, let's say, once the login is developed, once search is developed, once this particular third increment is developed, so we go ahead and integrate them all together. Login gets integrated with search and these two gets integrated with this third functionality. Integration is something that definitely happens. That means you are joining 1 or 2 modules to see how things are working. Now if we talk about the various advantages, it does has when to use. So very first thing is when to use. The requirements of the system should be clearly understood. Uh, can anyone say why do we need to have this particular constraint that requirement should be clear? Why do you think requirement should be clear? Padma, you were saying something?
Um, no, sir.
Anyone who wants to take any wild guess? Why do you think the requirement should be very clear and incremental? See, you have to break a big requirement into small chunks, correct? So if you are not clear what exactly the requirement says, if you are not clear how you need to divide, so do you think it will be easy for you to divide? I mean, you have to construct a big house, you have to revamp your entire house. How is that done? That is only done based on if you are clear, if you have a clear architectural plan, if you lay down the foundation, then you create first floor on top of it, then second floor and third floor and fourth floor, right? You directly cannot start from fourth floor to ground floor. That is not possible. So if your requirements are clear, if your architectural plan is clear, if your thoughts are clear around how you need to divide the given set of requirement into small modules, then only you are able to divide, right?
Yes.
That's the only reason why we say that requirements of the system should be clearly understood. You have to release the product early in the market, then you go for this kind of model. Why? Because 6 teams, as I just said, 6 teams working independently. Once all the things are prepared, they all are integrated, right? They integrate, they join them all together as a single product and it can be early released in the market. Let's say you have just taking a basic maths, right? 12 divided by 2, how much does that mean? 6. Or in, forget about 6 as well. Let's say you have 2 days to complete the product, right? And you have these 6 requirements. You cannot complete the given set of 6 requirements in 2 days. So what you basically do, or let's say 1 day to complete 6, you cannot do it all together. What you do, you assign these 6 requirements to one single team, like 6 teams differently, and they are working. And that way it is easy rather than one team working on all the 6 requirements at a given time. That's not possible. So if you do this way, then you will be able to release the product early in the market. Like you have 6 teams, you have one single day, and the product can be released in the market. Early release, right? When the software engineering teams are not very skilled. So if in case you do not have much skill on the team, you can follow this one. You can hire them, you can train them basically, and then you can let the development happen. Another thing is when high risk features and goals are involved. Definitely, if high risk features and goals are involved, definitely you have to use it. For example, this particular increment cost you 5,000, right? This login functionality costs 5,000. This search functionality costs 10,000, and this register functionality, or let's say any other functionality, this costs 50,000. So if there is any issue in this 50,000 functionality and you have not integrated 1 and 2 with it, right? I hope you are able to understand it. Let's say this costs you 1 lakh. The development of this increment 1 is 1 lakh. Increment 2 development is 2 lakhs. Increment 3 development cost around 5 lakhs. So how much is the total? 8 lakhs. Right now you have not integrated all the things. So if all the things are not integrated and there is any issue in increment 3, right? So 5 lakh is only wasted, 1 lakh and 2 lakh, like 3 lakhs are still saved. Just trying to give you a simple calculation that the entire integration is not done. If in case there is any issue in any of the requirements, only that particular part is getting impacted. The other portions, the other requirements, the other development or increments are still saved, right? That's the reason why we go with high risk features and goals are involved. Now talking about a point, pros and cons. Everything has its pros and cons. So if I talk about the pros is that software will be generated real quick. You have a time, you generate a software very quickly. Now if the software is generated very quickly, but why? Because you are dividing the requirement and then that's how it is done. Second thing, it is flexible and less expensive. Definitely, I'll just give you an example of 1 lakh, 2 lakh and 5 lakhs. It is less expensive. It is flexible. Why? Because you can assign different teams to work on. It can be easily developed. Development process becomes a little faster than expected. Throughout developments, changes can be done. So it's a little more flexible than waterfall. You can do the changes throughout the development. It is less costly as compared to other models, right? Cost is also very less. Not very less, but a little less. Now, if I talk about cons, like disadvantages, it requires a good planning. Why does it require a good planning? Good planning is required because if you need to drill down into the requirement, then you need to have a good planning structure with it. Second thing to understand is problems might cause system architecture as all requirements are not calculated, or you can say they are not collected upfront. So it might be the case that not all the requirements have been collected upfront, and there can be an issue that if the requirement is not clear, probably you find it very difficult to break the given set of requirement into small chunks and then get your development work started. Third thing is each iteration is rigid and does not overlap with each other. That's true. Like increment 2 is not related to 1, 1 is not related to 3. They are independent, and then that's how this is worked upon. Rectifying a problem in one unit might require correction in all the units. Now just imagine if all these three are integrated. Getting my point? If all these three are integrated and you have an issue in increment 2, will that not impact the entire product? For example, you have tomato puree. First thing, you create a tomato puree with all the veggies in it. Second thing, you have another, let's say, recipe or another puree of anything, like you have onion and garlic paste. You added salt and pepper in it. That is also fine. Third thing is you have something, some vegetable to add all together. Now, if there is an extra salt in any of the paste or puree, will that impact the entire vegetable taste, or will that not?
It
That's a
will
generic question
impact.
coming up. It will
Yeah,
impact, right?
it will
So
impact. Yeah.
it will impact. The same way, if there is any issue in any of the development side, in any of the prototype, it can be search, it can be login, it can be sign up. If any phase is impacted and we integrate the software, that means the entire functionality would be impacted, right? That's the wholesome area why we say that if if you rectify a problem in one unit, it requires correction in all the units. Why? Because everything is now integrated, and that's what we see it as a huge kind of a risk or disadvantage in the incremental model.